100 episodes! Wow! Thank you so much for watching, you all. I really appreciate that. And we'll celebrate it later when I'll be answering your questions about this show. But first, let's talk about the Valhalla news. Welcome everyone to Inside Java Newscast number 100. Sorry, I just had to say it again. Where we cover recent developments in the OpenJDK community. I'm Nikolai Parlok, Java Developer Advocate at Oracle, and last time I asked you how to celebrate the Jubilee, and the most requested single topic was Valhalla, often plus a cheeky when, and your wish is my command, so we'll address both today. We, that is me, on Valhalla, including the new early access build that was released last week, and then later Brian gets himself on the when part. After that, it's time to crack open a drink and chat. Ready? Then let's dive right in. So, Valhalla. This is a huge project. OpenJDK dubbed it Java's biggest refactor. And there have been countless talks, articles, videos, some of them by me, and even prototypes about it. So pretty much everybody has an idea what all this is about. But the issue here is that that understanding may not fit the project's evolved understanding of the subject matter, nor the plan that has formed for rolling out its features piece by piece. And I'm worried that that led to expectations that won't be met in the short term, or in some parts even in the long term. So today, I want to do a reset. For the next couple of minutes, take everything you know about Project Valhalla and put it aside. The more you know about it, the more I'm asking you to do this. Blank slate. We'll focus on what's right in front of us and then come back to the bigger picture later. So what is right in front of us? JDK Enhanced Proposal 401 and the Valhalla Early Access build that was released last week. JEP 401 takes on one of Java's core beliefs. Everything is an object. Or rather, everything has identity, because up to now, both statements meant the same. What do I mean by that? Primitives aside, everything in Java is an instance of a class, and every such instance has an identity that sets it apart from every other instance in the system, even if it is of the same type and represents the same value. The classic example is that if you create two new integer 5, then these clearly represent the same value, 5, but are still not the same thing. And Java recognizes this by having a call to equals return true, whereas the comparison with two equal signs, also called identity comparison, is false. Identity comes with a few nice features. One of them is mutability. Only if an instance has identity does the concept of mutating it even make sense. Because if all you have to identify an instance is its value, then changing the value makes it a different instance. But that's not what we want when we mutate an object. Say you have a user instance that is referenced by a local variable, a field somewhere, as well as a list that was put in. If you change the user's name, you naturally expect that change to be visible to code that either uses the local variable, the field, or the list to take a look at that user. Just saying that out loud feels kind of stupid. What else could happen? Well, if the user instance didn't have identity, then all users with the same values, let's assume that's just the name, so all users with the same name look the same. You change one, then what? Now the variable and the field reference users with different names. Or do somehow all users with the same old name get updated even if having the same name was a coincidence? So identity allows for mutability. And the way the runtime manages that is through unique memory locations and references to them. That too is very natural to us. There is one user instance somewhere and the variable, field, and list in the example just reference it. So when one of them mutates it, there's only one memory location to update and all references to it see the new value. Other data that are connected to identity are the identity hash code, probably not too surprising, monitor log status, and information the garbage collector needs to track objects. All of which are stored in 8 to 16 bytes that precede each instance's actual data. This is called the object header. But all that does not come for free. That object header is not something that the application logic cares about. So from our perspective, that's overhead and makes the memory less densely populated with the data we do actually care about. And that instances are always connected by references makes the memory hilly. I don't know, whatever the opposite of flat is. So for example, an array list of integer is not actually backed by an array containing numbers. It's backed by an array containing references that point all over the heap to the integer instances that wrap the actual numbers. This leads to more cache misses, more memory loads, and overall worse performance, and depending on use case, considerably so. But identity is not just a performance hazard. It also means that every object is by default mutable, and we need to do extra work to make it immutable if we want to. We can use synchronized on every object, even though we probably shouldn't. And being able to somehow distinguish two things that are supposed to be the same, say two local date instances representing the same day, this can lead to bugs, for example, through a surprisingly failing equals comparison. So identity comes with a bunch of features and drawbacks. The critical observation is that the features are often not needed. There is no domain-specific reason why two integer 5 or two local dates for the same day should ever be distinguished. And that holds for a lot of classes we create too, particularly if you're programming in a more functional or data-oriented manner. I'd go out on a limb and claim that most classes that have only final fields don't actually want to have identity. And this is where JEP 401 places its lever. The syntax change JEP 401 proposes is laughably small. Blink and you'll miss it. It would allow us to place the contextual keyword value in front of class or record, which means instances of those classes have no identity. And that's it. That's all of it. From that semantic, not performance-driven, semantic decision to give up identity for a class's instances follows everything else. And that's quite a lot. Too much, in fact, to discuss it all here, so I'll just touch on a few essential points, leaving the rest for a later video. As always, JEP 401 is excellently written, so I strongly recommend to give it a read if you're interested in this topic. So let's go over a few details of the proposal. First, we get more nuanced nomenclature. An instance of a value class is called a value object, and an instance of a regular class is now called an identity object. Second, that aside, value classes are mostly like identity classes. They extend object and inherit its methods. They can have fields and their own methods. They can themselves be abstract and implement interfaces and so forth. We'll of course focus on the differences, but don't let that distract you. They are still a whole lot like regular classes, including the mental model of references. Then third, one of the differences is that a value class, as well as all of its fields, are implicitly final, making it shallowly immutable. Of course, if a final field references a mutable data structure like a hash set, that set does not magically become immutable too, hence shallowly immutable. Then, since value objects don't have identity, the comparison with two equal signs can't compare identity, and so it will compare all field values. Still, this should not be the default comparison mechanism. Value classes can have a meaningful equals implementation that doesn't rely on field-wise equality, and other code should default to calling that to figure out whether two instances are equal. 5. Other identity-sensitive operations will not work. For example, synchronizing on a value object will lead to an error at compile time if possible, otherwise at runtime. And lastly, for now, around 30 JDK classes turn into value classes, among them the primitive wrappers, optional and derivatives, and a bunch of Java time classes. Unfortunately, string could not come along for the ride. Its identity-sensitive operations are used too frequently in existing code to make that change. Of course, JEP 401 explores these topics in much more depth and also goes into safe construction, migration, and finally, runtime optimizations. I let Brian speak to the latter, but before I hand it over to him, let me point you to jdk.java.net/Valhalla, where you will find the latest Project Valhalla early access build released just last week, which demonstrates everything we just discussed, as well as some of the optimizations Brian will lay out. I can only recommend you give it a try. If you do so, note that you do need to use --enable preview to observe any of the changes. Okay, time to let Brian Getz, Java language architect and lead of Project Valhalla, get a word in on performance, as well as on the infamous question, Valhalla when?
So I'm sure what everybody wants to know is Valhalla when. So I'm here to not only not answer that question, but also to say that that's not even a sensible question to ask. And the reason for that is Valhalla isn't a discrete point in time. It's a process where currently we've just rolled out an early access of the first Valhalla JEP 401, and this is just the first step in a long series. What the JEP 401 allows you to do is declare classes that are value classes, which means they're classes that don't have identity. And that's a semantic constraint. That has, on the surface, nothing to do with performance. But like a lot of other semantic constraints, they enable optimization. So, for example, when we declare a variable final, we're giving up the ability to mutate it. That's a semantic constraint. But as a result, the VM also gets the ability to do more aggressive constant folding on it. Doesn't mean the VM has to, but it means the VM can, and the VM, if it can do something for you, it probably would like to. So giving up identity enables a bunch of really interesting optimizations. So everybody thinks that Valhalla is primarily about heap flattening because they've seen the cool box and pointer diagrams that we put up on slides that show heap flattening. It turns out one of the most effective optimizations that Valhalla does is not flattening in the heap, but flattening in what we call the calling convention. So if I have a value object that I want to pass to another method or I want to return from a method, most likely what will happen is the object will never actually get allocated. Instead, its fields will be hoisted into locals, which in turn will be hoisted into registers, and they'll get passed across methods either as parameters or as returns in registers without having to ever inflate the object. So we call this scalarization. This is similar to what happens when escape analysis works, but escape analysis doesn't always work. And this is an optimization that actually contributes to a lot of the improvement that you see from Valhalla, even though it has nothing to do with the heap flattening that most people focus on. The optimization work that we deliver is something that is going to happen over time. So I know there's some people looking at this first EA and saying, oh, but it doesn't do that, or I was told that when Valhalla got here, we would have this optimization, and it doesn't seem we have that. Does that mean Valhalla has failed to deliver? Optimization work is not something that ever finishes. It's something that we continue to do over time and will continue to do over time. So right now, the EA that's out there, we're asking people for feedback on it, largely in terms of what's the experience of programming with it, with the understanding that not all the flattening optimizations, especially not all of the heap flattening optimizations, are going to happen immediately. Some of them are going to require other features that come, in later JEPs from Valhalla, like null restriction or relaxation of atomicity. Some are just optimizations that we haven't implemented yet because you can't do everything at once.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Time for some oh, wait a moment. Now it's time for some questions. Cheers, by the way. Okay, let's go. How long does it take to create an Inside Java Newscast video, and how many people work on one on average? And related question is, the creation process would also be good to learn about. Research, editing, etc. Does it involve internal interviews? How much of it is off the record? Okay, so the process is surprisingly uncomplicated, given that I work at a big corporation. A very important first step is to procrastinate between half a day and a full day before I settle on a topic. Then it takes me, assuming I know the topic well enough, about a day to write a script. Then, unless I'm outside, then recording can take an unknown amount of time. But if I record at home, it's often pretty quick. 2 hours. I do use a teleprompter, not right now, but usually when I read a script, I do use a teleprompter just so I get every word out right. Because without one, I realized I retry so often until in the end everything is perfect anyway, and that just takes way longer. So teleprompter it is. So like 2 hours to record a 10-minute video at home. It's already pretty generous. And then editing, anywhere between half a day to 2-3 days, depending on the length, depending on the amount of extra stuff that is in there. Often just like the tiniest little gags take a surprising amount of time to edit together. So yeah, but generally speaking, half a day to a day of trying to find a topic, a day of scripting, half a day of recording with setup and teardown and everything, a day and a half of editing. So yeah, I think that's about it. Oh, right, and so as you can notice, there's no review process. Nobody else is involved in any of this. Until David, and you will going to learn in a second who David is, until David does my thumbnails. That's when another person gets involved. Until then, it's just me. And I ask clarifying questions if I build off of a JEP or if I experiment with the code and I don't understand something or something seems weird. I do reach out internally. But those pieces of information are not really off the record. Like those are things that I can share. And I intentionally ask very, very few questions whose answers would be off the record because I'm here to share this stuff with you. And if somebody told me when something was going to happen that I want to know, the next thing I do is I want to share it. And I couldn't. And that would be terrible. So even if Brian did exactly know what Valhalla when, every Jap has a timeline for that, he's way too smart to share with me. Because then it wouldn't be a secret any longer. Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, and if other people do Newscast, because I don't do all of them, sometimes other people do Newscast, and it's very, very similar. Depending on how often they've done videos before, I might offer to pick a topic with them or review the script, or even help with editing, but just as often I don't, and then just somebody else does everything. So if there's a Newscast with Anna or Billy, for example, then they have done everything from beginning to end, likewise, except for the thumbnail. Let's see. This one was good. Which episode do you think is currently your most watched Inside Java Newscast? What's your guess, assuming you don't already know? This question irked me since I read it, because of course I do want to know, but I didn't want to look it up before I answer. So I thought about it for a while. And so the thing is this, I'm going to guess it's probably some kind of freak accident video. Maybe the one that I did about Java and AI. Otherwise, the videos that perform best are the ones that are either about a feature rundown, so something that happens 3 months prior to release. When the feature set is frozen, I go over all the features in a new version. Those usually do pretty well. And the Java is no LTS version videos, or Java whatever, N is no LTS version. Those ones do pretty well as well. But I'm gonna guess it's neither of those. I'm gonna guess it's some freak thing. Okay, so let's look it up now. Let's get a laptop and let's try this out. Because like I could scroll over the entire playlist, but I'm not gonna. I have to log in. Oh, God. And drum roll. Java gets a JSON API. That was, wow. And then before that is the Java 24 language and API changes. Okay, that's what I expected. Then the next one is Java and AI. I kind of put that one high up. Does Java 22 kill build tools? I did not expect that. The next one is again a version 1, Java 19. Then the next one is Java 23. I expected kind of those. Okay, so there we have it. The top one is Java gets a JSON API. Good thing that we settled that. Thank you for the question. What do we have next? Will there be a third Java whatever is not an LTS version video? Yes. The beatings will continue until morale improves. See you in summer 2027. Will there be an IGN in the style of the Road to 25 mockumentary? I liked it and would love to see some more acting from time to time. So first of all, the quotes around acting hurt me. But then also, thank you for the appreciation. That's great. Shooting those and editing those and scripting those was a whole lot of fun. But also it took so much time, so much more time than I usually have for an episode. I just told you, right? I take 3 to 4 days for an episode. And since I do one every other week, and then I also travel to conferences, that alone already is like a big chunk of my time, right? And then doing these way more involved videos, I'd love to, but that's not gonna happen on a regular basis, unfortunately. I would like more of the newscast to also show up on the Inside Java podcast. Right, so for those of you who don't know, we have a podcast as well, inside.java/podcast, gets you there. And we thought about putting the newscasts on there as podcasts. And that would actually kind of work because the newscasts are intentionally written in a way that you usually do not need to see the screen. So if you notice, I'm not sure whether you do notice, but if you notice, they work audio only mostly. The visuals are supporting what you hear, but I barely ever require you to look at the screen. And if I do, I actually do call it out occasionally. So they would make for a podcast. It's just not that trivial because there is sometimes references to things on YouTube. Like and subscribe, which by the way, you should totally do, like and subscribe. But yes, like stuff like that, right? That only works in a YouTube video, it doesn't work on Spotify, it doesn't work on Apple Music or whatever. So that would probably have to be edited, and the audio quality isn't often always that great. Like the podcast does have a pretty high bar for audio quality, and the newscasts, because it's more visual, slightly lower. So this mic is not as good as the mic that I was talking to you through earlier. Also would add like another couple hours, maybe half a day of the more editing for the newscast, for the podcast. So yeah, I'm not sure. Like I would like to, but it's not trivial. I'd like to see more interviews with the JDK architects. So first of all, Again, Inside Java podcast, this is where we do interview if we interview them, very often it lands there. So that's something you're interested in, you should definitely follow that, because on this channel, we also publish talks and other videos. So there's so much more here. So you might miss maybe one of those interviews, but those interviews are very likely to show up on the podcast. So subscribe to that. But the more critical answer is, yes, we would also like to interview the architects more often, right? I would like to talk to Brian Getz like every Friday. That would be amazing. Like, I'm not even joking. I would totally do that if you would offer. But he's smart enough not to, because that just takes up their time, right? If Billy and Anna and Jose and I constantly ask them or like do these interviews with them, I'd rather Brian work on Valhalla than talk to me about Valhalla, to be honest. How do you choose which questions from us are asked to the architects? Are the questions packed beforehand? Right, I'm not sure what, picked beforehand maybe. Picked beforehand? Anyway, so if I do like, hey, I'm doing an AMA, or rather I do ask the architect with the architects, how do I pick the questions then? And the answer is, it's a mix of upvotes, familiarity, and just my interest. I have to be honest there. If I think a question is good, it doesn't matter how many upvotes it gets, it's probably gonna get asked. If a question has been asked in the past and they're just past recordings that I could point to or that people could have watched instead, I'm not going to ask the question again usually. Maybe there's been a new change, or maybe it's a very important question that bears answering again. But again, since time is limited of the architect, as well as in these videos, right? Nobody wants to watch a Q&A that takes 90 minutes. So I try to focus on the questions that people are mostly interested in, that do not have good publicly recorded answers yet, or otherwise ones that I'm interested in. I think it would be great to hear about outside Java too. Getting interviews and perspectives on how and what is happening inside shows up outside would be great and healthy for Java. Right, so that's actually not an easy topic. So first of all, we do that a little bit. My colleague Jim does the Duke's Corner podcast, where he interviews people in the Java community, and it's not that focused on technology, it's more focused on the people, more on community side of Java. But it's a great podcast. I recommend you check that one out. And then sometimes companies report good experiences, right? Like Netflix, were really happy with virtual threads and with ZGC, and now probably with structured concurrency. So if those companies or other organizations, doesn't have to be companies, report, yes, we're using this feature in production, this is great, it works like this. If we pick it up, we're probably going to promote that, right? Because that's great, right? It shows that this is people use it in production, it's amazing. So that's easier. If we talk about the open source community, it gets more complicated. So let's say I talk to the Spring guys about something. Then will the Quarkus guy wonder why I'm talking to them and not to Quarkus? Do I then also have to talk to Quarkus? If I talk to people at JetBrains, I then have to talk about people in the Eclipse community. Being that Oracle is the steward of Java and we run this channel, that also comes with the responsibility that if we do talk about the outside world, we do it in a way that is fair and represents them equally in some understandable way. And that is actually a tough nut to crack. On top of that comes, I don't know a whole lot about many of those topics. I hope that I'm somewhat decent at interviewing people and talking about this technology that I talk about, because I know it pretty well. I do not know any internals of many of those other things, right? If I talk to people about logging, I'm just like, that's where I put my strings. Should I know more? So I don't feel that comfortable with that. There's so many reasons why it doesn't make sense. If somebody wants to talk about the wider community, I invite them to do that. That would be really great. But I don't think it should be us. I think Oracle is in a very specific position where it's better if we focus on OpenJDK. That's also why the newscast is focused on OpenJDK, because in OpenJDK I can represent everybody who's doing work in there somewhat equally. And that's what I know the most about. And if somebody knows more about everything around that and wants to talk about that, that would be great, but I don't think it should be us. Does the IGN team, I hope you have now figured out that the IGN team is basically me plus David doing the thumbnails and then whoever else I rope in if I have to go on vacation. Do they have anything in the works to engage the community with? And then the rest of the question mentions something like the Billion Row Challenge. I want to talk about what we do and after the next, so I'm going to get back to you. I'm going to read the next question and I'm going to get back to you. So next one is, I'm always wondering where you all live on the globe and then how you work together with that in mind. So because now I can get to introduce you all to all my colleagues, because our team is actually about 12 people large, and I asked them to record a little intro, but at this point it's not sure whether they all will, So I'm just going to play these recordings and maybe if I have enough time for editing, show you a cool map where they all live or where we all live.
I'm Ana Maria Michelchano, based in Haarlem, the Netherlands, and I curate helpful Java insights for you as the maintainer of Inside.java and occasional OpenJDK projects contributor.
Hey, Java developers, Billy Corando here, coming to you from Kansas City, Missouri, and I talk to you about the latest Java features.
Billy!
Hi, my name is Chad Arimura. I live in Marin County, California, just north across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. I guess while my team is trending online, I'm trending in spreadsheets. Yeah, it doesn't sound that cool when you say it out loud.
Hi there, I'm Crystal Sheldon, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States. My work supports new Java learners and their teachers.
I'm David Elvassé. I live on the French-speaking side of Belgium, where I spend a lot of time working behind the scenes, including on the Java YouTube channel, but backstage.
My name is Dennis Makogan. I live in Krakow, which is in Poland, and I help you to learn new Java features with our Java Playground developed for you.
Hey everyone, this is Heather Stevens, and I'm coming at you from Gig Harbor, Washington in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. I get to focus my Java days on teachers and students, and I have to tell you, that is absolutely the best thing ever. There is so much excitement and just lovely enthusiasm about Java out there in the world. It's a beautiful thing.
And then there's Jim Grisanzio, who's on holidays right now. He lives in Japan and he runs the Duke's Corner podcast, the Inside Java newsletter, supports Java user groups, and helps us with all kinds of organizational issues behind the scenes.
My name is Jose. I live near Paris. I'm the main writer for the Dev.java website. And on YouTube, I bring the Jeb Cafe, a not so monthly series of video, deep dive of Java features, and the Cracking the Java Coding interview, a series of shorts.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Raas. I live in Basel, Switzerland, and I bring you everything about Java and AI.
Hey Java developers, my name is Melissa Jacobus, and I am based out of the United States in Austin, Texas. And I help organize various conferences, including Java One. Hope to see you soon.
Hi, I'm Sharth Chander, or as many of you call me, Mr. Java Community. I'm based here in Davis, California, but the world is my office. I'm the head of Java Community Programs, and my sole purpose is to celebrate the Java community and the meaningful contributions that keep Java vibrant. People first, technology second.
Thank you, everybody. And now you know the whole team. And while there was a second half of that question I was supposed to come back to, as well as another question, as well as all of these great questions, oh, look, it's already so late and the episode is getting too long, or I ran out of time during editing. You pick one. Either way, I will answer all these questions as well as ones that you can put in the comments now in a second video that I will publish on my private YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/nipafx. And I hope to see you there. Other than that, 2 weeks, next Inside Java Newscast. So long.